I said something like that, like.
Okay, so it's 7:31. We're going to begin this regular meeting of the Rutherford Board of Education. I'm going to ask everyone, you can either remain seated or please stand, look at Mr. Hurley's Zoom box so we can do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of
flag,
the United
United
States
States
of
of
America,
America,
and to the
and to the
republic
republic
for
which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Mr. Kelly, can I ask you to do roll call?
Of course. Mrs. Ahmed?
You're on mute.
I'll come back to her.
It's on now.
Mrs. Ahmed, are you present?
Yes, I am.
Mr. Conti?
Here.
Mr. Healy?
Here.
Mrs. Jones?
Present.
Mrs. Librera?
Here.
Mr. Mazzone?
Here.
Dr. Racine?
Here.
Mr. Sprayberry?
Here.
Dr. Olati?
Here.
You have a quorum. Thank you.
All right, the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act was enabled to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meeting of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Rutherford Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place posted on the bulletin board outside the Borough Clerk's office, mailed to the Herald, South Bergenite, and the Record newspapers, and filed with the Borough Clerk. Hard copies of the agenda are available in the meeting room, and the agenda is posted electronically on Friday before the meeting date on the district's website at www.rutherfordschools.org. Due to Governor's Executive Order 104 and 152, citing the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's recommendation for cancellation or postponement of gatherings of 50 or more people for the coming weeks, this regular meeting of the Rutherford Board of Education will be conducted utilizing video conferencing as allowed by the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-6, as amended by PL 2020 C11. Members of the public may participate by logging on to the website at 7:30 p.m. that's listed on our meeting agenda. A video recording of the video conference meeting will be made available on the district's website, www.rutherfordschools.org, subsequent to the meeting. The video link can be found by opening the Board of Education link and clicking on Public Meetings and then Videos. So there were two sets of meeting minutes to approve, a regular meeting and executive session meeting minutes, and Ms. Clark sent revised regular meeting minutes, I believe, subsequent to what everyone received. Does anyone have any comments or questions about those? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to ask Mr. Kelly to enter those for our files. And now we are going to go to the final report of the student representative, Bridget Boylan.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's been a long and eventful year since I began in September, and it has been a pleasure. I'm glad to have had the opportunity to speak to you all one last time before I leave for college in August. It does not feel as though almost 2 months have passed since I was at the previous meeting, but a lot has happened between then and now. All AP exams were taken by students who enrolled in advanced placement courses at RHS, and despite many technical difficulties, students should have completed their makeups through the month of June. We will receive our scores on July 15th, which is coming up soon, and I'm confident we will maintain our status as an AP Honor Roll high school. We celebrated the annual senior breakfast on June 5th through a YouTube video created by the administrators of the high school. Students received awards and recognition for their achievements, and I believe there was over $130,000 given away by deserving students at the breakfast. That night was supposed to be our prom. However, as a result of the circumstances, we were unable to follow the plan as usual. Fortunately, there is now a plan in place to have a prom at the Brownstone in Patterson on July 24th in an outdoor setting and following all guidelines. I believe that it's being run by parents to the project graduation committee to give the seniors one last chance to say goodbye. The winter spring varsity dinner that is usually celebrated in June was conducted virtually. We celebrated our athletes and our senior athletes especially, as well as awarded athletic awards to outstanding athletes who exemplified what it means to be a Bulldog throughout their high school career. Students collected their belongings from the school during the last week of school, which was extremely organized and efficient, limiting the amount of contact and the possible spread of any germs. Within 2 minutes, I was able to return my 10 textbooks, receive my cap and gown, receive the checks for my scholarships, collect my belongings that were in my gym locker, and collect all the stuff I left in my regular locker. It was also very nice to see some of the teachers we haven't had the opportunity to see in months, and I hope to see some of them at graduation. When we last spoke, the graduation ceremony for the class of 2020 was going to be virtual. However, now we are having a typical outdoor ceremony at Tryon Field, of course, following social distancing guidelines and the orders of the governor. All the seniors are extremely excited to have a chance to say goodbye to each other, our teachers, and the Rutherford High School, and an in-person graduation ceremony is a great way to do that. It's a week from Wednesday, and we are all super excited to see one another, especially after being away for so long. As I leave the Rutherford School District for good, I'm extremely grateful for the amazing education support that I have received. I'm proud to be a Bulldog and will not forget my roots as I leave for college in the fall. I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to serve on the Board of Education this year and for the gift that you all sent. It was very nice. Thank you so much. Have a great summer.
Thank you.
Bridget, it's been wonderful having you. We've enjoyed you tremendously. Would you just answer one question for me? How are you going to have a prom? Can there be dancing?
I'm not sure the details, but I know some of the parents have organized it and they're selling the tickets.
Bridget, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to clarify a couple of things for anybody who's listening or watched this recording. I found out about this prom about 3 o'clock this afternoon. It is not, I don't believe it's being run by Project Graduation. It may be, I don't think it is. Ms. Cochran is shaking her head no. It's not being run by the high school. We have nothing to do with it. A parent is throwing a party, I guess. So I think it's great that you guys can get together and have a good time. I hope you're all careful and you practice all the regulations you have to practice. We are not involved in it in any way, shape, or form, nor are we involved in it vicariously through Project Graduation. It's something that's being done on their own. And not only are the parents doing it, and it's summertime, but they're also graduates. So we don't have much. Not that we ever had a lot of control over parents or people in the summer. We have none right now. So I just want to make sure everybody's clear on that. Okay.
Well, have a wonderful time, Bridget, at graduation and whatever other celebrations you have, and we wish you the best in the fall.
Thank
Wake
you so
Forest.
And Bridget, thank you for the year was a very interesting year in a lot of ways. And I know there were some meetings that we were trying to find our way through Zoom. You weren't at, but we always appreciated hearing from you. You did a great job. Your reports were very thorough, and I think the report you gave at the May meeting was very important for everybody to hear what it was like, not only as a student, but as a senior during the shutdown. So we appreciate you for doing that and wish you well in college.
Thank you.
Bridget, I just wanted to say that the first time I met you, we were sitting next to each other at a BOE meeting. Then I moved over when I became president. Now we're sitting here on Zoom. So from all angles, you've done a great job this year. Obviously, you've been through a lot. And one of my charges is speaking at the live graduation. And I'm actually more anxious than usual because I'm trying to figure out what could I possibly say to all of you seniors after what you've been through, where you might remember at least one sentence of what I say. So if you have any advice for me offline, feel free to shoot me an email and let me know. But congratulations on your perseverance and to all the seniors for all the great work. And it's been great having you as the representative to the board.
Great job.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, does any board member have any questions or comments?
Yeah, what college is she going to?
I'm going to Wake Forest in North Carolina.
Oh, good luck, honey.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Before Bridget leaves, one other student-connected item that I just found out about this week, and one of our high school seniors, Ryan Chowdhury, he won the Group 5 Northern Bergen County Math League Championship, the individual award for the third year in a row, which is pretty remarkable. To do it one time, he's done it 3 times in a row. That's a league that's comprised of the best math students from each high school that competes regionally in Bergen County. He'll be attending Stevens next year, Institute of Technology, with a major in chemical engineering and a minor in biochemical engineering. So we congratulate him and wish him well, but that's quite an accomplishment for 3 years in a row to win that prestigious competition.
Any other comments? Well, congratulations again, Bridget. Thanks for your service to the Board of Education. And if you have any, you no longer have student work, so you might have some getting ready for college or professional work otherwise. So if you need to jump off for any reason, feel free to go ahead. If you want to stay on for the rest of the, any portion of the meeting, that works as well.
Congratulations.
Great job.
All right, so we're going to move on now to public hearing aspect of the meeting. And you'll see on the meeting agenda, the public hearing is for the extending of the contract for Mr. Hurley, Superintendent of Schools. As the board knows, at the end of this past 2019-20 school year, there were 2 years left on Mr. Hurley's contract. In conversation with Mr. Hurley, it was his thought that he wanted to renew a contract at this point so that we basically would, as opposed to finishing out the 2 years, sort of rescind that contract and create a new contract for 5 years. So that instead of getting Jack for 2 more years after this year, we have a new contract for 5 years. That was a contract that the board had the opportunity to see. It was sent then to attorneys to approve, to the district, the county superintendent. And so this is that public hearing at this point. Mr. Hurley, do you have any comments or anything you want to add?
No, I think you summed it up. I felt it was important to get the contract over with and move through, especially through the referendum project, so that we're not midway through the project and renegotiating it. And the board, the only thing really in this contract is extending it. The terms of the contract have not changed financially. They're the same terms the other contract was under. So it's simply an extension of the current conditions for the next 5 years instead of next 2. And I appreciate the board entertaining that thought. And of course, I came up with this thought before all the distance learning and preparing for the new school year happened, so maybe what was I thinking? But no, I do appreciate the board accepting my proposal so that we can move forward together through what we're going through now and with the building and the new facilities I'll be coming into shape.
Yeah, so the timing was perfect. It was definitely pre-pandemic. We got that contract in. But I think as a reflection of, your evaluation this year and the sentiments of the board when we discussed your contract, everyone was really pleased to know that, your continued commitment was there and to be able to extend this contract for 5 years. So I know that's something the board is really pleased about and had very positive and favorable discussions. So Mr. Hurley or Mr. Kelly, is there any formal aspect to this public hearing beyond just acknowledging where we are with the contract?
No, there's a motion in the personnel section to approve, so that would be the extent of it.
I think when Dr. Alati's asking, is there a time for the public to this public hearing? Do they have an opportunity to speak now or during the open part of the meeting, if they choose to speak?
Well, when the meeting's open to the public, then before personnel is voted on, you could open it up to that as well.
Okay.
It is agenda items, so.
Sounds good. All right, thank you. So we're gonna move on then to the report of the superintendent.
Okay, thank you. In your agenda, embedded in there is the scores for the self-assessment for the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights. And you may or may not recall that back in, I think it was November, we reviewed this because the process, this is for the 18-19 school year. You have to do a self-assessment of how certain things were done in the school, on programs for students, training for faculty and staff, infusion into the curriculum, how the investigations for any HIB were conducted, did it follow the procedure and the protocol, and you do a self-assessment. Each school's HIB coordinator and team evaluate how they think they did. It gets filtered up to our district-wide coordinator, and then we have to submit it to the state. So back in November, we present these exact same numbers for the approval for the board to go forward to submit. And now we're just reporting that the state accepted our numbers. And the numbers are all pretty good. I mean, when we think of schools, we look at 70s and high 60s, and we think, you know, that's not really a great score, but the max that you can get is a scale of 78. So we're doing very well self-assessment. I think we're doing well in terms of the results of the investigations and the number of problems that we have to investigate. And in the only school that falls below the 70 mark is the high school, but that has to do, I think, with the idea that we're doing a little less formal assembly programs, fewer assembly programs on a high school level than we do in the elementary, so they score a little higher there. So any questions about that before I move on? I know you saw those numbers before, and this is not an approval thing, it's just simply reporting to you what the numbers are. Okay. Okay, then if I can move on, a couple of quick announcements. Two things involving staff. You may recall that Mr. Ursulisi was doing a reading to students on the elementary level, and there was a social media blast on that, and we put out a press release on that. Well, the school board magazine that you guys all get, I get every month from school board, picked up on a couple of our things and may run pictures and captions in their magazine, but then reached out to me today for a little more in-depth about that program. So it may be that we get an article in there. Again, that's a credit to Brian. It's a credit to all the teachers for what they did because they picked up a number of our activities. It's also a credit to our communications consultant because she helps get the word out there, and you know, it gets picked up, and we get a little bit of the good things we're doing here gets spread out a little bit wider than just the community. In the same regard, Mr. Frazier, our athletic director, has been asked by the State Athletic Association to be one of their representatives to the National Federation of High School Sports. So that would give David a seat on their board for voting on national rules, regulations involving athletics throughout the country. He'll be required to attend a couple of meetings in Indianapolis, but it's all on the State of Athletic Association's expense, ours. And he asked if I'd have a problem with him missing a few days to do that. And I think I had no problem with it because to me, it's not only a feather in his cap, it's a nice feather in our cap as a district. And to have an athletic director who's recognized by the state to represent the state at the national level. So we congratulate David on that and look forward to you know, getting a little more info and you know, having a seat at the table is always an important thing. So that's a good thing. In terms of, I want to thank again the board, the administrators, supervisors, the teachers, the staff, the parents, most importantly the students and the entire community. I've said it many times, but this was a very difficult year in many ways. You know, we started off with dealing with the repercussions of the incident at Union School that happened at the end of last school year. We moved into a referendum. We moved into the post-referendum work, and then we got hit with this pandemic and went through a whole uncharted world. And we came through it, I think, in pretty good shape. And I think in some ways got stronger, in many ways got stronger because of it. And now we have a whole bunch of other stuff we have to face together. And I'll get to that in a few minutes. So once again, thank you to everybody. The facility plans are moving along. We had a very good meeting, I think, with Building and Grounds. We also had a lot of that discussion with finance, and everything's on target. We're a little ahead of the original target dates because we did get started a little earlier. There's been a couple of little hiccups here and there, but for the most part, nothing major, and work's going on at a good pace at all 4 buildings. Pierpont will be going out to bid next week or week and a half, and not out to bid. The bid will be awarded ahead of the next board meeting, and then the board will be asked to accept it. And Mr. Kelly, if you could refresh my memory, we had 20-something packages picked up.
Last I heard was 26 interested contractors picked up the bid package.
Yeah, which is wonderful because it means a lot of interest. Also means a very competitive, hopefully competitive bid for a very big project. So by the end of the summer, we'll have projects going one degree or another in 5 sites, and so far all is going well. As I mentioned to all of you in my message and to the committees that met, we have weekly meetings, well, every other week with the project, but weekly meetings with our EPIC management team, with our architects and all the contractors and the building principals to review all the work that's done. We get weekly updates in a formal way from the project managers. We get daily contact from them, and both Mr. Kelly and I and Mr. Paterno and the respective building principal are copied on every bit of correspondence that goes out on anything related to the project by any party. So, it's a lot of email, but we are apprised of everything that's going on. So it's really going very well. And as the Finance Committee saw, Mr. Kelly's done a really good job of organizing and structuring the budget for the project in a very user-friendly and informative way. Before I move on this topic, Joe, anything you want to add, Mr. Kelly?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. Thank you.
I don't know if anybody has any questions, but I think good. Okay. Graduation for Union Middle School was held on June 22nd through a virtual ceremony with a photo op opportunity at the school a few days before. The ceremony followed the ceremony as it would have taken place in person. And again, I thank the teacher, Ms. Hessel, who put that together. It was a lot of work to take videos from whole different places and pictures and put it all together. And she did that, while she was teaching her classes and so on. So she did a really great job with that. And I hope that the parents and the students appreciated and had a good moment with it. One of the things that's a little different from the live ceremony, I mean, it's not live ceremony, but you do have a keepsake. You could revisit that forever and ever. And it was interesting to see some of the views we've had on some of our award ceremonies and the like, the senior breakfast, the athletic awards, the middle school were viewed by, 1,300, 1,400 times, which, is really a large number compared to the few hundred that may get to see it. So, we have to look for silver linings and clouds. And I think that was one. High school graduation is set for July 8th. It's going to be a very limited ceremony. Is going to be the same. We're going to change how processions in and out. There's going to be social distancing. Parents are going to have marked areas in the bleachers where they're going to be asked to sit. We're going to be putting out information on all the social distancing rules. We usually run graduation with about 50 or 60 faculty. This year, we're going to be using about 8, maybe less, so that we stay within the guidelines that we have to stay. But I think it was very important to try to get the whole class together. Students did not want to graduate with a section of the alphabet. They wanted to graduate with the classmate who they had honors bio with, or did the school play with, or ran track with. So, I'm glad we were able to get the whole class together. There will be some changes about how they're going to enter and leave the field and so forth, but it will be hopefully a nice ceremony. And I think back to the 23rd, the night that would have had the ceremony, and I believe it was about 91 degrees with about 75% humidity. So maybe we lucked out when moving into July. We thought it was going to be hotter. And if my suits don't fit me after the COVID-19, which means 19 pounds, I'll just say it's so hot I'm not going to wear a suit to the graduation. Okay? Now we're on to the big challenge, which is to take the 104-page document that came from the state and decide what we're going to be doing with the reopening of schools. As I mentioned earlier, we had a committee in place since May, looking at information from a variety of sources, other states, other countries, from the Academy of Pediatricians, from the CDC, from, you name it, we were looking at it, just gathering information, discussing it, working, coming up with, 4 or 5 different what ifs. Well, the plan that came from the state now, I'm glad we took that approach because the state is leaving a kind of an open door for a lot of things that we can or can't do. It's putting a lot on the local district. We asked for volunteers and we got over 55 volunteers of teachers, secretaries, teacher assistants, school nurses, child study team members, bus drivers, custodians, board members. So we have a group now that's going to be divided into those 5 committees that we talked about, and we'll have several subcommittees with committee chairs. And it's going to be a very busy and hectic couple of weeks because the goal is to get a plan together that we give to the parents and the community a month ahead of the opening of school. So essentially, we have to have a plan in place by mid to end of July, so we have time to review it, think about it, run it by a few folks that we have to run it by, tweak it a bit, so by the first week of August, it's out there, okay? I'm not going to comment on anything that may or may not go in the plan because I have a committee of, counting the steering committee of 60 plus people. And we're going to be putting out communication. Our communication consultants are on our community outreach committee, and they'll be putting out information as appropriate so that we can get the feedback we want from the community. But it's going to be, again, our goal is to put as many students as we can back in the buildings, but it has to be in a safe way. So, we're gonna be looking at how we do that. There's no secret. We discussed that at the press conference, if you watched it, or the announcement from the governor, that there's different ways you can do it. You could do it with a hybrid schedule, which means an A day you're in school, B day you're at home. We could do it with a full schedule, providing PPE in the appropriate places. We could do some combination thereof. There's no one way of doing this. So we're going to be looking at what's best for our building, what's best for our kids, what's best for our parents, what's best for our teachers and staff, and what's going to be the safest. Best includes educationally and safe. And there is not one plan short of coming back like nothing ever happened that is going to make everybody happy. Okay? If some people are going to be upset if kids have to wear a mask, some people are going to say, I don't want my kid coming back if they don't wear a mask. Some people are going to be upset if it's A and B day. Some people are going to be upset if everybody's back in the building. So we have to come together, and the time now is, and this is my message to the committee, and will be my message to the committee at our kickoff meeting, is no longer time to say what we haven't been told, what we don't like. Now it's time to figure out what we can do with what we know. Okay, we know we can reduce class size. We know we can provide PPEs if we have to. We know we can roll up reading mats and change the way classrooms are arranged. We know we can cancel assemblies and field trips. We know we can cancel use of the building by non-school groups. We know we can create one-way hall. We know there's a long list of things that we know we can do. So the question is going to be, let's not focus on the we can'ts. Let's focus on the we cans, and let's figure out how we can get this turned around, because it's 2 months. It's just about 2 months. I mean, and I want to really applaud the teachers and the supervisors and the secretaries and the folks. I'm a 12-month employee. The administrators are, supervisors are, many of them, not all of them, some of them. But some of our supervisors, some of our teachers, all of our teachers, they're 10-month employees. and Board of Ed members are not employees. And people are giving up their time during the summertime to work in a very condensed 2 or 3 week period to get a lot done. So I want to tell you that we have a tremendous amount of information. That he just, right before I signed on here, printed out things, United States pediatricians, what they're saying. We're gathering information from every source we can, but now there's time to put all that together, funnel it down, and come up with a plan. So we'll be working on that. We have to always keep in mind that things can change. They could change for the better, they could change for the worse. We saw that tonight when the governor announced that this afternoon, well, we're not going to have in-restaurant dining. We're going to push that back for a couple of weeks. So things can change. So it is a little frustrating, like the myth of Sisyphus, where you're pushing the boulder up the hill and you get almost to the top and it rolls back down. That's what these last 3 months have felt, but they felt that way for everybody. Not just me, not just the board, not just the teachers, for everybody. So we're going to keep pushing that boulder, and we'll get it to the top one of these times. One of these times we'll get there, and I hope it's going to be the first week of August, where at least for a short period of time, the boulder's going to rest, and we're going to get back, and we're going to get going on a new school year. Okay? So for those of you that are directly involved, you're a little more aware. When I tell you it's every layer, you think about something connected with school, it's there. Okay? And it's not just coming up with a new curriculum or a new schedule, it's coming up with everything you do, doing it differently. Or if you're doing the same, how the same. And I know many of you have dealt with the same stuff in your professional life. So you get it, you know where we're coming from. Okay? So we're going to work very hard, very diligently, intelligently to try to get the best plan for it. And the last comment, we can have meetings in person now based on the rules of how many people can gather. As I said to you, I think would be more prudent to stay with Zoom through the summer. And, and when school's back, because we know we're going to be back in some fashion, right? Go back to public meetings. However, we are going to have to change our platform from Zoom to Google Meet, because Zoom's generosity of giving free service beyond the 1 hour is going to end on July 1st. And Google Meet we can use since we are a Google school. However, it's going to require, as I found out over the last couple of days setting up meetings for next week, it's not the same. It has different places that you have to go and do certain things, different setups. It's going to require a learning curve, right? So I'm just throwing it out there that, as we delve into this learning curve, we'll see what we want to do in July. I mean, right now we'll stay with the remote meeting, but if Google Meet runs into some problems or we don't re-up somehow with Zoom, we'll keep you posted on that, okay? So no change right now, but I just wanted to be upfront in case something comes at the last minute. I'm sorry for the relatively lengthy report, but in reality of all the stuff that's going on, it really was kind of short. So if there's any questions, I'll take them, and if not, thank you for indulging me.
Any questions from board members? Okay, thank you, Mr. Hurley. We're going to move on to the report of the president. So I want to start by saying I appreciate, Mr. Hurley, what you were saying about remaining on Zoom. I think we've had really strong attendance from the board, and I think it gives us the flexibility if we're, in Brooklyn, down at the shore, different boroughs, different states, to, all be together. And I think it's really important during the summertime to be able to support Mr. Hurley, the staff, the admin, and all the things that are going on. I wanted to also echo and thank Mr. Hurley and the district staff in helping to execute a successful virtual graduation for Union School students, and also the in-person photo opportunity. Having an 8th grader myself, I will admit it felt a little bit like Disney World. You got to Union School, there were all these great signs. Mr. Schweitzer, Mr. Ryan were there, could take photos. I'm not calling them Disney characters. I'm just saying that it was great to have them all there. And I think for my son, and I think maybe some other 8th graders, hopefully feel that it was a really defining moment of bringing closure to the chapter. And I think the district did the best it could, and really appreciate all the efforts. You know, I also know that, you know, between now and September, the board potentially is going to be a little bit busier than usual as we continue to support the focus on the usual business operations, but also planning for September, given the pandemic circumstances, the new guidelines that Mr. Hurley talked about. I appreciate when I looked at the committees and Mr. Hurley shared that there are constituents across all sectors. And I think I really appreciate that you're trying to get feedback and insights from so many different constituents. And I think that's the, you know, the best way to create a strong plan. You know, Mr. Hurley asked Mr. Mazzillo, Ms. Jones, and myself to be on 3 different reopening committees, and I'm sure I speak on our behalf in saying we look forward to serving, helping in any way that we can. Also, you know, as we have facility projects that are going on this summer at the same time, I just wanted to acknowledge how well, in my opinion, the board is functioning, and how committees are having really rigorous and in-depth conversations to make sure that we understand the schedule, the scope, the fiscal prudence being exercised as the district solidifying bids and, you know, starting construction earlier than expected. I also wanted to thank Mr. Hurley and Mr. Kelly for your transparency and your depth of detail in those documents that you're putting together, the construction calendar, financial budget document for the facilities project spending. When it comes to the transparency and detail, with this board's engagement and the players on here, you probably don't have much of a choice, but to be, you know, very, very detail oriented. But I say that in a very complimentary way, that I think that's the way to build, you know, real trust and integrity, is to have all those things in place. And I also just, you know, wanted to quickly just point to something that, you know, might speak to, you know, one of the strengths that, you know, districts have to have is just the financial prudence and really, you know, thinking ahead and planning ahead. And reviewing that 104-page document this past weekend, on page 64, it said, school districts may be able to use funds on deposit in their emergency reserve accounts to finance unanticipated expenses that arise as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. I bring that up because a week or two before these guidelines came out, Mr. Hurley and Mr. Kelly had a meeting with the Finance Committee and talked about doing just that. And they anticipated, you know, with any potential surplus that we had, that there was going to be a need for an emergency reserve account for unanticipated spending that's going to happen in the fiscal 21 year. And I think that's really important because, you know, like Mr. Hurley said, we don't know what some of the unexpected costs are going to be for next year, additional PPE and, you know, staffing, who knows what the other costs are going to be. So just a kudos for your insight to doing that. And then finally, just a note to say that I'm excited that the district has applied this year. Every year, the New Jersey School Boards Association comes out with a school leader awards nomination, and districts can get involved and they can apply. And this year, the focus is on showcasing effective programs and practices used to address the challenges of remote learning. And so in consultation with Mr. Hurley, we felt that that there were ways in which that the Rutherford district really was unique. And so the focus was really on traditions that keep students engaged. And so the Rutherford School District has submitted an application to the School Leader Awards under the auspice of highlighting old traditions that were given a new look in the virtual space we were in, whether it was the virtual pop cert, the art walk, the virtual field day with all those different activities, the field day, the senior signing day, videotape sports awards, the annual awards breakfast, and like was mentioned, $130,000 in scholarships that were announced. So it's something that makes our district stand out. So I'm appreciative that we're able to make that happen. And I think it's an exciting thing for the district. Win or lose, I think the fact that we had something to write about and submit is great for the district. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes. So that's it for my president's report. Are there any questions or comments from board members? Ms. Jones?
I did get to watch many of these events. I really enjoyed them, especially the 8th grade graduation and the senior breakfast, because I always love to see the students get all the awards. But I think that they were all well done. And the one benefit, because I attend those when they were regular functions, you really got to see the children's, or the students rather, faces, because it was virtual. And I appreciated that. I thought they were very well done, all of them. Booster Club dinner, every one of them.
Thank you.
I agree.
And Dr. Alati, thank you, because you did use your words, the heavy lifting on that leadership application. So I appreciate you doing that, because quite frankly, it was at a time of year that was going to be tough to get it done, and you stepped up and did it on behalf of the board and the district. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and just thank you to the admin, the communications team, because they really ran with it. I thought it was going to be something that was going to be potentially reviewed even with the board, but it moved super fast and just got done. So yeah, we'll happily see how that goes. All right, so at 8:11, we are going to open the meeting to the public for any agenda-related items to be discussed. If you have something you'd like to say, if you want to turn on your video camera, maybe raise your hand. We can have you speak if you have something you'd like to say. All right, Mr. Bogosian. So if you just state your name and address.
Yes, James Bogosian, 155 Home Avenue. So I have two questions. The first one is probably best addressed during the finance portion. Can somebody please explain what lines 13 through 16 are with respect to the agreement with St. Mary's? That can be deferred to later if you choose. And then the second question I have is around the reopening plans. I know that it's all hypothetical at this point, but is the plan that the plan will be district-wide, or is there a possibility that there may be differing things based on either age of the students or limits of the buildings, where capacity might be an issue in one building where it isn't in another?
We can answer both questions pretty easily. I can let Mr. Kelly answer the one, or I can. Money comes to us. Joe, you want me to do it? It's for St. Mary's.
I'll do it in finance, because I was going
to do it in finance, but that's a procedural thing that happens every year. Anything's possible. There's nothing that's not on the table, so I can't really answer that question. I mean, in theory, we have to be conscious of parents who have kids in multiple buildings. We have to be conscious of we can't, that all students, whether from pre-K up to the age of 21 in the Bulldog Academy, are entitled to the same type of education. We also have to keep in mind that some students are more capable of working independently than others based on age and so on. So nothing's off the table. I mean, ideally, we'd like to have a plan that's universal, but ideally, we wouldn't like to be doing any of this. So, there's nothing that isn't on the table. But that said, we're going to clear that table relatively quickly, because we've been doing work now on this for about 4 or 5 weeks, and we have to have a plan together. So, when we first start, we're going to say, here's all the things. Well, let's focus in now on what we think is best based on research we've done. So that's the best answer I can give you. Nothing, anything is possible right now.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the public for agenda-related items?
Virgil, can I just add one thing, Dr. Alati, that I should have said before? One of the things we do want to hear from it at the appropriate time is what parents are thinking. However, right now, we can't ask you what your thoughts are about coming back to school if you don't have a vision of what school is going to look like, because your vision now is what it always looked like. And you might say, I don't want to go back. I don't want my child going back there, because they're going to be on a mat in the corner of the room reading together, or they're going to be, in a big pep rally, or, whatever the case may be. So once we get to a point where we have a vision of where things are going, we are going to want to hear what people think about that. But right now, anything's on the table, and we have to narrow it down to what we think is workable. I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. Okay, any other comments from the public? Hearing none, then at 8:15 PM, we're going to close the meeting to the public. And next, we're going to move on to new business where there is action to be taken. Ms. Ahmed, you're going to have a job summarizing this personnel agenda. So good luck.
I'm gonna have to make it quickly too, because my Chromebook I'm not in my home in Rutherford, and the service here somehow doesn't get on the computer, but it gets on my cell phone, and I haven't really charged it that much today. So if I blank out, somebody will have to take over for me. Okay. So
Okay.
anyway, we have a lot to do today, but 1 and 2, Maria Aldridge and Rebecca Dark are all teacher assistants. One's at Pierpont and Union Middle School. They're resigning. Number 3, Travis Bly is a approval for a physical education teacher at Washington School. 4, Michael Brown for a physical education teacher in a Pierpont School. Michael Foster is number 5. And I tried calling the board office, but I was too late. PT physical education.
Part-time.
That no, if it was physical therapy or part-time. Part-time, again, physical education teacher to approve Michael Foster. Yeah. 6, Nicole Degel, a leave replacement teacher at Union School to approve her. 7, Alex Mermini to approve her as a long-term substitute teacher at Union School. Danielle Ladier. Number 8, a long-time approver as a long-time substitute teacher, arts teacher at Union School. John J. Hurley to approve the master contract between John J. Hurley, Superintendent of School, and Rutherford Board of Education for the period of July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2025. 10 salary approvals, and we have Mr. Hurley, Mr. Paterno, Beintrip, Clark, Hughes, Sigenthal, Rodriguez, and Kivovitz. And Christopher Richmond. Wow, that's a little complicated there. And Matthew Mykeden. 11, salary approval for administrators. They're all listed below. 12, salary approval for supervisors, and there's a whole list of those. Let's see. Let me try to summarize them a little. Number 13, there are 19 salary secretaries for approval effective July 20th to the 2021. Custodial maintenance is number 14. There are 21 of those listed. Number 15 is hourly employees. We have for bus drivers, there's 6 listed. Clerical bus library assistants, 16 are listed. Teacher assistants, 51 are listed. Lunch monitors, I didn't count those for some reason, 29 are listed. Home instructors at $35 an hour, it's 14 of those are listed. Substitute teachers, $90 per diem is 23 of those as listed. Substitute teacher assistants at $11 per hour when needed, there are 10 of those. Substitute secretaries at $11 per hour when needed, there are 3 of those. Substitute monitor, there's, I guess, 1 of those for $11 an hour. Barbara Ahern. Thomas Frederick is a custodian, $11 per hour when needed. Patrick also Barnanello. Miscellaneous hour employees, computer room, hourly rate $15. For Pierpont School, Mark Dottie, and Union School, Donald and Curry. Number 1, attendance office, hourly rate $15, Anthony Sorreo. There are 2 video, hourly rate $35, Stephen Met, alternate Michael Flogno. Miscellaneous stipend positions, there's 1 for parent education coordinator for Kimberly Simonetsky. That's how much? Do you see how much that is? Is it 2,000 or $2 or what? 2.000.
Trying to find it right now.
It's on it's like right before coach's longevity, number 16. So it's like the first, right at 15.
I
Page 12.
Huh?
I think it says 2.000, but I think it's supposed to be a comma. It's supposed to be 2,000.
$1,000. Yes, that's Kim Huzzy for the that's doing the parent ed core, and she coordinates parent programs. Separate
Okay.
from the Log Academy, she coordinates those programs. So
All right. That's okay. 16, coaches longevity stipends for coaches for 2019-20. There are 5 after 7 years, as per the REA contract. There are 14 after 12 years. Number 17 is transfer of John Randazzo, physical education health teacher from Washington School to the high school. 18, coaching assignments. Approve the following coach assignments for the NGSI approval. Interscholastic sports for 2021 school year. There are 5 to approve with that. 19, service provider, maximum 3 workshops for the school year at a rate of $35 per hour. Bridget Lowe. Number 20, virtual extended school year teacher assistants. There's 6 listed there. 21, virtual extended school year to rescind appointments. Extended school year program at the rate of $3,500. Is that right? Rescind APPT. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. 22, service provider for summer PD. Service for necessary summer professional development training and funding through the Coronavirus Aid Relief Economic Security CARES Act, not to exceed 5,000. 5 of those. 23, travel reimbursements to approve that for 1920. And there's Anise Egger-Smith,
I know.
and that's it. And my power's low, so let's.
All right. Any questions?
I
from-
made it.
Made it.
If I may, before anybody asks questions on number 10, just a couple of adjustments that will be made to the minutes. Longevity for Donna Siegenthaler and for Chris Richmond is new for this year, so that'll be prorated to their 15-year anniversary, which for Donna is July 21st and for Chris is August 8th. So the minutes will reflect that.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Jones?
Thank you. Just a little more information on our changes at physical education teachers at Washington. Obviously, I see John Randazzo, who has done a wonderful job as the elementary teacher at Washington, and he's going to the high school. But what confuses me, and perhaps you can enlighten me, is that we have a part-time physical education teacher at Pierpont, and we have a new teacher at the kindergarten center. So I take it that the replacement, Travis Bly at Washington, is not splitting the time with Tom Potter at Lincoln. There's a change in that?
Yeah, this was discussed with the Personnel Committee and was in the minutes of the Personnel Committee that came out back in May. So we had a resignation from a phys ed teacher at Pierpont. And for years, we have been slightly overstaffed at Pierpont. That teacher traveled to Lincoln School for part of her schedule. We also had a teacher from both Washington and Lincoln that would travel to the kindergarten center.
Yeah. No.
So we were able to replace the one person who resigned with 2 part-time people. And the one part-time person stays at Pierpont and has entire duty there. The other part-time person will be at the kindergarten center, fulfills all the requirements there. From a dollar and cents situation, it comes out to be the same as hiring, maybe even a little less money than hiring full-time. And it keeps 3 people or sometimes 4 people from having to travel.
Okay, thank you very much.
Other questions from board members? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Ahmed, do you want to move those?
Upon recommendation of the superintendent, I'd like to move the following resignations, retirements, or adjustments, reassignments, appointments, etc.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Conti. Any last comments? Hearing none, I'll ask Mr. Kelly to please take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed,
Yes.
Mr. Conti,
Yes.
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Lebrera,
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone,
Yes.
Dr. Racine,
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry,
Yes.
Dr. Oladi.
Yes.
Motion's carried. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, we're going to move on to curriculum and instruction. Ms. Jones, if you want to take us through it.
Yes, thank you. The Curriculum and Instruction Committee meeting was held on Monday, June 15th. In attendance was Mr. Hurley, Mrs. Shelley Ahmed, Dr. Oladi, Mr. Sprayberry, Mrs. Fargo, and myself. There was approval of textbooks in English and Social Studies, a revised curriculum for English, social studies, and summer enrichment academy, and world languages, and the New Jersey Seal of Biliteracy. I had mentioned one thing because years ago there was a second set of textbooks that were left at school, and one that the students could keep home so they didn't have to carry it. We no longer do that. And Mr. Alati had asked, Dr. Alati, I'm sorry, asked about virtual platforms for remote learning. All of that was ended. The meeting ended at 7:15. There are 4 resolutions under curriculum and instructions that have been put forward by the superintendent. 1, out of district placements. 2, service providers. 3, elementary co-curricular, to replace the Pierpont School Fitness Club with the Mindfulness Club for the 2020-21st year. And that the Mindfulness Club will be a place for students to unwind and relax. Looks like we're going to need that. It will also help students to learn and practice strategies to increase mindful attention. That's pretty much it. And the curriculum guides, as I just mentioned, in English and social studies are so listed for resolution number 4.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Any comments, questions from board members? No, Mr. Hurley, any comments? No? All right, Ms. Jones, do you want to move those?
I move resolutions 1 through 4 under curriculum and instruction.
All right, we have a second.
I'll second it.
Mr. Sprayberry, seconds. Any last comments? Hearing none, I'll ask Mr. Kelly to please take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed,
Yes.
Mr. Conti,
Yes.
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Librera,
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone,
Yes.
Dr. Racine,
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry,
Yes.
Dr. Alati.
Yes.
Motion's carried. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Finance, Dr. Racine.
All right, thank you. Finance, we had a finance meeting on June 15th. I was there along with Ms. Ahmed, Mr. Mazzone, and Dr. Lottie. We discussed 3 items. Okay. One was the current budget status, right? And at the meeting, Mr. Kelly discussed, like Dr. Lottie said, we're gonna put some money, transfer some money into our emergency reserve account, which we can use for emergency expenses during the pandemic. Number 2, we reviewed our current budget status. We're going to approve some leasing of Chromebooks. That's going to be coming up soon. Okay. And 3, we went over the capital projects fund. We did a review of the finances of the referendum construction and a look into how that may play out. So, that was the meeting.
Okay.
Any questions on that?
Yeah, any questions or comments from board members? No?
Nope.
All right. Mr. Hurley, Mr. Kelly, any comments?
Yeah, can I walk through some?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, sure. I was going to go through them in blocks. Should we just do that?
Okay.
Yeah. So there are 22 items tonight, more than we've usually had in finance. I figure we'll go through them in blocks because So number 1 is the routine approval of bills. Number 2, the May 2020 Secretary's report. Number 3 are the budget transfers. Those are the first block. That's screen of questions there. 4, 5, 6, 7 are all, or 4, 5, 6 are all the ESEA, ESSA consortium applications and the IDE applications. And number 7 is a CARES Act application. So I figured, Jared, you want to take those as a block? Maybe.
Sure. You want me to
explain those?
Yeah. Yeah, these
explain
are
those?
annual, federal grants that come in. So these are numbers for 2020-21 for the new year. It's all pretty standard operating procedure here. The CARES Act is obviously new. So we have submitted the application. It has already been approved, but the district will receive $128,000 to non-publics, and this will get to Mr. Bogosian's questions too. They also get a piece of that, so that's a pass-through to them. So our application involves spending money on supplies for cleaning and sanitation and for managing the virus. and also electronics for making sure that students are actively engaged and able to participate in the learning process with the distance learning process.
Right. Is that for money we already spent and money we may spend, or just
That is money we will spend.
we will spend, right? Okay.
We have not spent it yet.
Okay. Yeah. Number 9 is qualified purchasing agent. This is to make Mr. Kelly able to buy stuff for us up to 44,000. This is standard every year, right? I think, Joe?
No, it's not.
No, it's not. Okay, it's not standard. So what is this then?
Well, this is I am a qualified purchasing agent.
Right.
And this increases the limits at which I can exercise my authority. It was $40,000. Anything over $40,000, we would need to go out to bid and or through some kind of a purchasing consortium. And in which case I would still need board approval. That number has now been increased to $44,000. So anything below $44,000 is within my authority, assuming you approve this. The next level down would be 6,600, 15% of that number. It was 6,000 going up to 6,600. Anything above that and below the bid amount requires numerous quotes. That's my quote threshold. So that number has increased too. So it just gives me a little more authority. In a practical basis, I don't think we're ever going to get to a point where that something comes in at $42,000 and it's going to make a difference. But it does reflect, the changes in pricing.
Okay. Item 9 is a donation of $3,500 from the RHS All Sports Booster Club. Right. Number 10 is our deposit to emergency reserve, and it says up to 400,000. Right, we're up to 489,857. Right? Is that it?
Yeah, the limit is the committee had discussed putting up to $100,000 into an emergency reserve. The law states that the cap, the max you could put in there is 1% of our operating budget, which is that number, 489,000. So I'm not suggesting that we put that whole amount into an emergency reserve at this point. But once we get done with the audit of this year's financials, we'll talk to the auditor, and at that point, we'll have a better sense of what's going on with the coronavirus and what the requirements are. So if we need more money for purchases like that, then you can factor that into the final determination of the number. But that's the absolute maximum that we could put in.
Right. It's its first year we actually use that number, so it's just a planning ahead for this time.
I'm going to add one thing, being we're doing this in chunks. We'll have we don't know yet, right, what we're going to need to and it depends really on how we fit the students into the building and through a schedule. We may need an awful lot of PPE. We may not need as much. We may even need some help with staffing issues. I mean, there's a lot of unknown, but we'll have a better idea. We'll have the actual idea in about a month's time. So the flexibility to maximize that money would be a good resource, not to break the budget.
Right. And numbers 11 and 12 go together. It's leasing Chromebooks and then a reimbursement. This happens every year. It's always confusing. So I think, Joe, you want to explain that?
Sure. Yeah, we do have, and we put it in the budget, the lease of, I think it was about 500 Chromebooks. We have to rotate our stock every year. We got to get some more in. And in fact, there are quite a few that are no longer being supported by Dell. So the two motions are, first is to enter into a lease agreement, to go out to bid for lease purchasing on these Chromebooks. But the fact is the way these transactions work is that we have to issue a purchase order for the entire purchase price of the Chromebooks, which came to, I think, about $120,000. Okay, then once the lease is in place, then we request the reimbursement of that $120,000 from the leasing company, and then we enter into the 5-year lease payment schedule. So that's what this is doing. It's allowing us to, the second motion is allowing us to request reimbursement from the leasing company. And then we would have leasing, a 5-year lease structure in place.
Thank you. And number 13 through 16 are the non-public pass-throughs. This was Mr. Guzzi's question earlier.
Yeah, these are, and if you saw it also in the IDEA, it's in ESEA application number 5, 6, and 7. There are funds, both federal and state, that come through us that are intended for non-public schools that are in town. In our case, it's obviously St. Mary's High School and the Academy at St. Mary's. As you just indicated, that is strictly a pass-through. And so they have some latitude as to how they want to spend that money. State level, it includes these ones that are here on motions 13 through 16. There's a security grant, there's a textbook grant, there's also a technology grant, and there's a no, I said that one. There's another one I'm blanking on, but it's all just pass-through funds, and we work with them, with the principals of those two schools. The memorandum of understanding just lays out how our purchasing process works so that they can adhere to those requirements as well.
Right. And to be clear too, it didn't exist, we wouldn't get the money anyway. So it's not like.
Yeah, if they don't spend it, we have to send it back. So
Right.
generally speaking, but.
Thank you. Number 17 is to approve payment of our communication consultant, who's been very useful for us.
Yes.
Number 18 is student insurance, that's insurance for the upcoming year. 19 and 20 and 21 are all about serving lunch for 2021. Right? I don't know if Joe, anything you want to explain, or?
I don't think so. I mean, our lunch program, we have this agreement every year with the Carlstadt East Rutherford Board of Ed, Becton. So they prepare the meals through Pomptonian and deliver them to the schools. So it's not an ideal situation for us, but we don't have any kitchens, so we don't have a way to prepare the meals ourselves.
Okay, and last but not least, to approve parent transportation for the name listed at the amount listed. All right, that's everything on here. All 22. Any questions?
Just one comment I want to make. In speaking with the attorney today, in number 1, which is the approval of the bills, there are 3 payments being made for some of our contractors on some of this construction work, specifically Drill Construction, who's doing the floors over at Union School, Cat Court, who's doing the addition at Lincoln School, and Practical LLC, who's doing the science lab renovations at the high school. They have not yet submitted all the documentation that they need to effect the contract. So the attorney's recommendation was that we just have the caveat that payment of those bills is contingent on receiving that documentation. So the check is ready to go. We're going to hold on to it until we receive what we need and what they're supposed to give us already. All right.
Any other questions? None. Dr. Racine, you want to move this?
Yeah, I'd like to move numbers 1 through 22.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Mazzone. Any last comments or questions? Hearing none, I'll ask Mr.
No, I'm sorry. I sent you all on last Wednesday a list of the contracts that are in place for this year. This is a requirement. It has been for the last 5 years or so by the state that we make this publicly available. So I sent it to the board. I'm going to read a statement here, which will be included in the minutes. So if you just bear with me on this. Legislation passed into law, which is Public Law 2015, Chapter 47, approved May 7th, 2015, requires that by July 1st of each school year, the school business administrators submit a written report to the Board of Education on school district contracts. The report shall include a list of all district contracts that will be awarded, subject to renewal, or expire during the school year, and an explanation of all applicable federal and state laws, rules, and regulations related to those contracts. On June 24th, 2020, Mr. Kelly emailed to each member of the Rutherford Board of Ed an electronic listing of all 2019-20 purchase orders, representing all contractual agreements entered into by the board for the fiscal year. A hard copy is available in my office for public review. These contracts have been, and will continue to be in full compliance with all state and federal statute and regulations. In particular, New Jersey Title 18A:A et sec, NJAC Chapter 23, and Federal Uniform Administrative Requirements 2 CFR Part 200. Like I said, this legislation came in out about 5 years ago. There has never been any guidance as to what this is supposed to look like or why this was required, but it has to be reflected in the minutes. So, thank you.
I have a quick question, not regarding that. What was the? Can you just explain, Joe, what the whole St. Mary's thing? I get there's money passing through, but why is that happening?
Why is that happening? I don't know. That's happening at the Trenton level.
Well, Trenton,
The federal grants, which would be the ESEA and the IDEA and the CARES Act, are specifically required to allocate some of those funds to non-public schools in the district. And the states as well. The states being the non-public technology, the security, the textbooks, and nursing. That was the fourth one I couldn't mention, non-public nursing. So those are required per legislation that funds be allocated to non-public schools in our physical municipality.
Got it. Okay.
And those have been in place for years, many years.
Okay.
Any other comments? All right, hearing none, I'll ask Mr. Kelly to please take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed,
Yes.
Mr. Conti,
Yes.
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Obrera,
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone,
Yes.
Dr. Racine,
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry,
Yes.
and Dr. Alati.
Yes.
Motion's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have policy. Mr. Librera, anything to talk about?
Nothing to report.
Okay, thank you. Then we're going to move on to buildings and grounds. Mr. Healy.
Yes, we did have a Buildings and Ground Committee meeting on June 15th, 2020. And in attendance was Mr. Hurley, Mr. Kelly, Mr. Paterno, and myself, Mrs. Jones, Mr. Sprayberry, and Dr. Alati. And we discussed two items, two categories. One, the 2020-2021 capital outlay projects. And number two was the status of the building and construction renovations, which we went through with the group. And that was it. I'll move on. We have one resolution for this evening to review and approve. And it's a change order, which is listed as an allowance management adjustment from Practical LLC for unanticipated work needed for the science lab alterations at the Rutherford High School. And it's for an additional monies for additional asbestos removal. And it's at a cost of $8,843.67. So this resolution we're putting forth tonight, putting forward for approval.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly, do you want to comment?
Yes, please. The contract that we have on each of these projects, the agreements we have with the contractors does provide an allowance for change orders such as this. In this particular case, the contract amount included $85,000 for change orders. So this is not, this is money that's already been encumbered, already planned for. If they don't end up using all that money for change orders, then we get it back. But it does provide an allowance so that we're not blowing the budget right off the bat.
and Mr. Kelly, just for the sake of the board members who were not at the Building and Grounds Committee meeting, EPIC's role in this, I think it would be good for everybody here that EPIC often pushes back on these change orders, as does the architect, to ensure that they are
Absolutely. Any potential change orders that the contractor wants to put through have to go through EPIC, and they do challenge this. In fact, there were two other change orders that EPIC has rejected on behalf of the board, so those have gone away. This one had actually come in at about $22,000 or $23,000, and EPIC challenged that as well. And primarily it was because Practical, the company we've engaged, put in a change order that would provide that this that their subcontractor would perform this abatement, but also do the demolition. This is up in the ceiling of the related areas. But the fact is, Practical already had the demolition in there. That's something they were supposed to do, was being paid for. So Epic has pushed back and said, well, you got to reduce that. You got to take a cut here so that we can get this done. So Epic is there and involved, and it has to pass their scrutiny.
And I think that's an important point to make. We're not going to make it every time there's a change order, because there will be frequent change orders throughout the process. But I know when we, going back 2-3 years ago, when we talked about the benefit of the need for a project management team to be the representative of the Board of Education, that's just one of the many things they do and are able to do because of their level of expertise and understanding.
Okay. Any other comments, questions by the board? Mr. Sprayberry.
I'd like to take the moment and say, from the Building and Grounds Committee for Jack. So, I mean, it was a great meeting, very detailed, very transparent. Being in the industry 30 years, I'm here to push and look at what's coming in, what the reports are from the construction management side. And it was just a really great meeting, really appreciate it. So for the public out there, all the board members are asking questions, we are pushing, and they're meeting those, and they, really great reports. So just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sprayberry. Any other comments or questions?
Dr. Lottie, before we move on the one resolution, in the agenda, pages 23 through 37, I just wanted to know the intent. Maybe Mr. Hurley and Mr. Kelly, do you want to comment about that? 2020, 2021 appointments and operations.
Yeah, may I, Jack?
Sure. Yeah, this is annual.
It's a separate category. We probably could have done a better job of delineating that. But this is really reorganization stuff as we're about to enter a new fiscal year. These are all things to get us set up so that we can proceed with business as usual going forward. We usually look at these very quickly. I mean, these are all basically primarily all carryovers from prior years or requirements that by law, we had to appoint me as the board secretary, for example. So we go through these in 3 big chunks here. So, this is standard. It's annual. It's to get us set up so we can proceed with the new school year, the new fiscal year.
Okay, so we're not voting on or reviewing this tonight.
Yes.
No, we are. You are approving all this.
Not part of buildings and grounds.
Not part of buildings and grounds.
Okay. All right. Fine. Thank you. Okay.
All right.
That was the question. Dr. Lottie, can we move on this one resolution then?
Yes, you may. Do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. Jones? Any other comments? Hearing none, I'll ask Mr. Kelly to please take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed,
Yes.
Mr. Conti,
Yes.
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Librera,
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone,
Yes.
Dr. Racine,
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry,
Yes.
and Dr. Lottie.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So in this next section, I know that it's broken up into different categories. Do you want me just to give a quick overview of each category? Or do you want to do that, Mr. Hurley or Mr. Kelly? What's the best format?
Joe, I think either way, I mean, we could just go through it by
Sure.
category. If you want to present, Mr. Kelly, since
Yeah, of course.
some land on your desk.
Sure. The first category is all relative to board operations. So there's the approval of the adoption of the Code of Ethics. No change in the Code of Ethics here. Every January the board reads this and you acknowledge having received it. Also, we have approval for me to conduct the organization meeting in January prior to the board electing a president and vice president. And then approves the use of parliamentary procedures in meetings going forward. The next group of 26 are appointments and designations for different positions that are required that are required by law for the district, starting with the board secretary, purchasing agent, which is also me. That goes back to the motion we had about the qualified purchasing agent. All these other things, appointing some of the professionals to do, to take responsibility for these matters that might arise. The third category is
Operations.
30.
District operations.
District operations, page 30.
district operations, yeah. So just like I said, these are all things that we need to keep going, business as usual come July 1st.
So, Mr. Kelly, are there any changes to either the district operations or any of the appointments? Is there anything we should know that looking different that we're looking to approve?
Give me a second to flip through this. I don't think
I
so.
don't believe so, no.
I will say that last year, as you know, within the last year, we changed our banking relationship. We left Wells Fargo with BCB right now, so that's reflected in here. You do have a motion in here, as you always do, to enable me to pay bills between meetings as long as I present you with that bills list. We rarely use that authority, but sometimes it is necessary. No, I think that's really the extent of it. There's nothing too sexy here.
Okay. So now do I ask for a board member to
Make a motion.
this, or how do we, yep, okay. Do we have a board member who wants to move this?
I think
As I go back,
with a motion to approve
appointments and
2021 appointments and operations.
correct.
Dr. Lottie, would you like me to do it? I'll put it forward as a motion for approval for this evening.
All right, thank you, Mr. Healy. Do we have a second? Ms. Jones?
Second.
Thank you. Any last comments? Hearing none, I'll ask Mr. Kelly to please take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed,
Yes.
Mr. Conti,
Yes.
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Labrera. She's muted.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Mazzone,
Yes.
Dr. Racine,
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry,
Yes.
Dr. Olati.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, that brings us to page 37 of 38. Old business. Is there any old business to be?
Dr. Lottie, I have one item.
Okay, Mr. Haley?
Mrs. Jones and I did attend the New Jersey School Board Association Delegate Assembly, which was a WebEx meeting, virtual meeting. And I think for the size of the group, it was handled very well. There was 2 policy changes. There was reports, of course, from the association, and they are online. The New Jersey School Boards Association website contains those reports, if anyone wants to review that. There was 2 motions, 2 policy changes, 2 different boards presented, one each, and they were proposed and approved. And the essence of the first one was a board that sends students to another district's schools should have representation and the ability to participate in that board's elections. And the way they do it, by the number of students, that was changed where it was a little more lenient. So the participating school districts could actually have representation. Not that they don't today, but it's a little stringent to get someone on the receiving district's board. So that was changed. And the second one was similar in nature, where a board, a district belonging to a regional board, if a vacancy occurred and the board member was from that participating district on the regional board, they would have the opportunity to replace the board member. and that also was passed. So those were the two main discussions that went on at the meeting. So that was it, and that was the this time. And next time is November. We'll have another association meeting for delegates. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Reilly. Mr. Jones.
There was another meeting today for the county leaders that was a WebEx meeting, and I did tune into it. It was on the reopening of the schools, so very timely. There were lots of things discussed, but I just want to pick up on 4 of them. People had asked, what do you do with active shooter drills? And you can't have, when they're all crouched down and they have to be close together. What do you do about children who have to eat lunch if they have to wear masks? If the bus is a 54 passenger bus, where now they could take 54, now they can only have 11. So would the screens have to be used in the buses? As Mr. Kelly had mentioned, that's a possibility that might have to be bought. And the only other thing that was, well, there was lots of other things of interest, but the one I'd like to comment on was people worried about the liability for the school district if a student gets COVID-19. John Burns is an attorney for New Jersey school boards, and I think he did a beautiful job with this today. But what he said is, the questions that a judge would ask is, did the district follow the CDC guidelines? Did the district follow the New Jersey Department of Education guidelines? And did the district follow their own guidelines? And if you adhere to those 3, that would probably reduce any liability. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. And I don't know, Mr. Hiller, if you have any comments, but I would think that some of the district's policies around safety procedures and some of the CDC guidelines are at some point in conflict and are going to have to be reconciled, larger than just the district. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's very premature to talk about any of this, but the thing is, we have to follow the guidelines that are given to us by the governor and the DOE. And he has links in there to see, as they do, to CDC. However, the guidelines we were given were very open-ended, allow you to do certain things. So yeah, if you have kids that are less than 6 feet apart, and even 6 feet is not the magic number for a lot of people, but it is for the CDC. So if you're supposed to wear a mask, but obviously during lunch, you're going to have to separate kids so they can have lunch. So part of our charge in this committee is to figure out how we're handling lunch. And that's not an easy task. That's the standard rule for anything that we get sued about. If you are followed policy, regulations, and procedure, then you're cleared, and insurance is going to cover. If you don't, you're not. So in this case, or in any case, whatever the guidelines are that we put together. But Mr. Bruno's comments are well taken, except as Dr. Alati said, those 3 animals he's saying we should follow might all be very different species. And so, it's going to be, which one are we following? So we have to work all that out. A good point about the security drills. It was never mentioned anywhere in the 104 pages about what to do for security drills. So you want to, they're telling us to, not to have kids in the hallway at one time, but what happens in a fire drill? Kids are in the hallway at one time. They're telling us not to put kids in close contact with each other. What happens in a lockdown? They're in close contact with each other. And there was no guidance, but also there was no relaxation of the requirement. So, that's another rock in a hard place. If we do it, we're violating CDC recommendations. If we don't do it, we're following the statute in place that says you have to do 2 of these every month. So, hopefully, we can't go too slow, right? School starts on September 8th for kids, but with the State Department or any large group, you go slow sometimes because there's going to be things that they're going to say, oops, we forgot. We need to, do something to make this happen. But the security things is something that is on my agenda for Wednesday with my steering committee as something we have to look at, how we do those. And, I understand the severity of this. I understand the national severity of this. what are the insurance company, the attorney's going to say if, God forbid, there's ever a crisis that requires a security threat or a fire, and we've gone 3-4 months without practicing what to do?
Yeah.
And what are the odds there compared to what the odds are of children becoming ill? So, this is a tough situation we have to work through.
I think that's pretty well said to address where we're at. Any other old business? Okay, then we're going to move on to legislative update. Anything to report, Mr. Conti?
Not not anything new other than has already been discussed this evening.
Okay, thank you. Then at 9:01 p.m., we're going to open the meeting to the public for any items related to or not related to the agenda. Ms. Corcoran. Just unmute yourself and you're on.
Kelly, you have to unmute her.
No, I got it. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So as you know, Katie is now graduated
Congratulations.
next week. I personally want to say thank you. Thank you to the administrators. Thank you to the Board of Ed, Mr. Hurley, teachers, staff of all the schools, because now the Lincoln and Pierpont teachers have moved around, and especially RHS. Both kids had an amazing experience at the schools. And, people ask me, would you recommend living in Rutherford? Absolutely. The schools are amazing. This is why we settled here. And now it's another chapter, one kid's in Boston and one kid's going to be up the street in Montclair. So I'll still be around. But I wanted to thank the Board of Ed and the administrators and the staff and the teachers and pretty much everybody in the schools. So thank you for a good ship. And I really feel for you guys that have to make all the decisions in the incoming year, because it's going to be crazy. Going to be crazy. Thank you.
Ms. Corcoran, would you just say your address just for the record so we have that?
Oh, sorry. 390 Montrose Ave.
Thank you. Well, I was just going to say, I've been on the board for a few years, not as long as a lot of my colleagues, but it's great to have active participants who really care and come to meetings. And so thank you for your comments.
Thank you for your support.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Congratulations on both your children, who were great students and great examples of the type of students that we get and that we work with. And we appreciate, I appreciate throughout the years, going way back, you always were willing to speak your mind and be honest and truthful, and that's a good quality to have.
Thanks, Bonnie.
Any other comments from the public? Okay, hearing none at 9:03 p.m., we're going to close the meeting to the public. There is a need for an executive session, as we're going to do a review with Mr. Hurley of the CSA evaluation. Expect to be out for maybe 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes.
10.
Does that sound right?
10 sounds good. Yeah.
We have a motion.
Okay, so we need a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
All right, Ms. Jones, seconded by Dr. Racine. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so
Action will not be taken, correct?
Correct.
correct.
Okay.
So I believe we're going to say goodbye to the public. Thank you for coming to the meeting.
I'm going to step out too. I'm going to make Jack the host.
Then I'll send you a text on.
Okay, you are now the host. And I'm going to stop recording.
Okay.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Joe.